Okay, here we go. We are starting Daf Beis in Sukka. Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach. If you don't make it to the shir, we're going to be on Zoom, and the recording will be put up on nishmas.us. You'll be able to go to the Nishmas website, and hopefully it'll be there. Okay. Let's begin. All right. So the Mishnah. Sukka2aVideo primarily talks about Sukkah. First two parakim is the building the Sukkah, mitzvah yeshiva Sukkah, and then we'll get into the Dalaminim is in the third parak, and then we'll talk about Simcha Shoeva, and the Korban Sachag towards the end of the Masechta. Okay, the mission begins. Also, I have Be'ez Hashem. I'll continue to make a review sheet for a pinpointed review, which I'm not sure how I'm going to share it with you. But we'll figure that out. I can put it on the website too. What?
WhatsApp.
And a WhatsApp group. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the Mishnah begins with 4 halachas. Before we start the Mishnah, we see that the Mishnah is talking about Sukkah first. Why we begin with Sukkah? Why don't we talk about Dalamina first? In the Psukim, it says first L'kachtem l'cham b'yam rishon, and then it says B'Sukkah Seish Shivas Yamim. So why are we beginning with Dalaminim? Why are we beginning with Sukkah? We should begin with the mitzvah of Sukkah first. That's the kasha that Archel Aner begins with. And two terutzim. One teretz is that you're correct. The part in Parshas Emor, the end of Parshas Emor, the Torah says first is the holiday of Sukkot for 7 days, and then it finishes off the Moedim, and then it goes back and begins again with Sukkot and tells you that there's a mitzvah of Dalad Minim and that there's a mitzvah of sitting in the Sukkah. So the mitzvah of Sukkah is actually mentioned first. The mitzvah of Yeshiva Sukkah is mentioned after Dalamina, but the actual mitzvah of B'chag HaSukkos is mentioned first. That's first of all. Second point is that if you go in time order, like you'll notice, I know Masechta Shabbos goes in order. It starts with Erev Shabbos. It's how you have to prepare for Shabbos. Then it goes to in Kira, and then Taimdim. It goes through Friday afternoon, and then it eventually gets to the Malchus of Shabbos. So Sukkah also begins, the first mitzvah you do, L'mayisa on Sukkah, is not Dalad Minim. The first mitzvah you do is sitting in the Sukkah. Another teretz, I forgot who gave this, from the back of the Masifta, he says that the mitzvah that you have every year, Mid'iraisa, everywhere, is the mitzvah of Sukkah. The mitzvah of Dalad Minim, when the first day falls out on Shabbos, you don't have Mid'iraisa everywhere. So Sukkah is a constant deraisa, and therefore maybe they begin with Sukkah. All right, here we go. Sukka2aVideo, we have 4 dinim in the Mishnah. First halacha, Sukka2aVideo ma'amis from amma, a Sukkah that's over 20 amis. That means Sukkah means the schach is over 20 amis high. Pesula, no good. Rabbi Yehuda machshir. This says it's kosher, and the Gemara is going to discuss this machlokes. Next halacha, which is the minimum shear. The minimum shear of a sukkah is going to be 10 tvachim. It's going to be at least 10 tvachim. We'll learn about that in the Gemara. How many walls do you need? The Gemara here says the shalish tefanis doesn't have 3 walls. It's going to be puzzle. And shechamas, and how much coverage do you need? The Mishnah says shechamas meruba mitzilasa. If there's more sunlight than shade, then pesula. In these 3 cases, the halacha is pesula. Good. That's the Mishnah. Let's see Rashi. Once we're not too many big Rashis here. Review the Machshir, Big Gemara Farish Buktail. We'll explain what the Machlekes of Yehuda, or where the Machlekes of Yehuda and the Chacham apply. Shena Gavay Asar Gemara Farish Taima. Shalish Tefan is not Big Gemara of Yalaflo. Gemara's going to learn that out too. Shachamas Meru B'Tzilasa. This is a problematic Rashi. Rashi says Hamuat Batul B'Roiv. What's the problem with Chamas is Meru B'Tzilasa? Last Rashi on the Mishnah. Hamuat batal b'rayv. The muat, the minority schach is batal in the rayv sunlight. V'harei kimisha inen, and it's like it doesn't exist. That sounds pretty. The problem is that halacha in bittul is that if you can see something, it's not batal. If it's nicker, if you can see it, it can't be batal. For instance, the halacha in taruvis is that if you have a taruvis, if some chelev, trace of fat, fell into your soup, and then the soup cools down and it floats to the top, it's not batal, because it's right there, even if it's a miyat. If it's nicker, it's not batal. So what does Rashi mean, hamud batal b'ray? So maybe he means in terms of the shade. Shade is not something that has mamashas. So the shade that's be given as opposed to the sunlight, maybe the shade is batal. The disciple says that a move batal raiv doesn't mean that it's batal. It means that halacha, different halacha of raiv. You know, the two halachas of raiv. One is azlin and basaruba. We follow the raiv like in Bezdin. Bezdin Paskins, it goes with the majority rules. The miyad is not batal. The miyad is still there, but you follow the raiv. Azlin and basaruba. Maybe that's what Rashi means. Says the stapler. Okay, but here's the last words of Rashi are important. He says, "Val shema schach kriya sukkah." The sukkah gets its name from schach. Sukkah gets its name. Schach means a coverage. The ikar sukkah is going to be the schach. We'll have to know if we'll learn if the din of the walls are how much of that of that is there is that part of the sukkah. Okay, let's go weiter. So the Gemara. So Gemara here is going to discuss. Anamanal discusses two things. The first thing that the Gemara is going to discuss is the way the Mishnah taught its halacha, psula. We'll see what it's in as opposed to what, and then the next is going to be the second point of the Gemara on this page is going to discuss the source of 20 amos. All right. So the first point first. The Gemara. The Gemara asks a stira. Not real. It's not a real stira. It's like linguistic. We find a similar halacha when it comes to a mavui. 20 amos is possible by a mavui. What's a mavui? A mavui is it's like a courtyard. Back in the day, it's sort of like the lobby of an apartment building, probably. You have many people have access to a mavui. And the mavui goes into Rosh Hashanah. Okay? But being that many people have access to it, it looks like a Rosh Hashanah. It looks like a Rosh Hashanah. So Chazal asked carrying in the mavui. They were concerned that you're going to carry in there, then you're going to end up going straight into Rosh Hashanah because you're not going to be able to tell the difference between the area you're in and the real Rosh Hashanah. So they required on the entrance of the mavui to make a heker. Okay, mavui had three sides. It was open on the third side. So Midyarayis, it's a Rosh Hashanah. The Rabbanan were concerned that it looks like Rosh Hashanah, so they required you to at the entrance of the mavui to either put a lechi, which is a vertical pole, or a kaira, a horizontal pole. Now that horizontal pole couldn't be more than 20 amos high. Right? So, same thing as the sukkah. So it can't be more than 20 amos high. The mavui, the kaira, going across horizontally, can't be more than 20 amos high. Now, the Mishnah though says it in a different way. It says the Mishnah Tan Hasan says the 5 lines down, mavui shukavai masara ama, a mavui which is over 20 amos high. That means the kaira that you place in the mavui, that's over 20 amos high. Our Mishnah wrote, possible, it would be invalid. The Mishnah there says, Yema'et. You should just lower it. Rabbi Yehuda also there says you don't need to do that. So, frankly, Gemara Maishna Gabi Sukka the Tani Psula. Why in our Mishnah does the Tana just say that it's invalid and doesn't tell you how to fix it? And in Eruvin, the Gemara says how to fix it. That's the kasha. The Gemara wants to know why is there an inconsistency in the Tana. So the Gemara gives two answers. First answer: Sukka2aVideo Tani Psula. Sukkah, which is a din d'oraisa, Rashi understands this in an interesting way. He says it means sukkah. We know the halach already. It was from Sinai. Without this Mishnah, we knew the halach is that it's possible. So the Gemara could just come up. The Mishnah could just start off and say a sukkah that's over 20 amos. It's possible because that's something you should know. A mavui, which is the Rabbanan, and only be introduced in the Mishnah. So there, Tani Takanta, the Gemara tells you how to remedy it. That's the first teretz. So the difference between the deraisa and the Rabbanan. Rashi Taisus learns differently than Rashi. Taisus in the second Taisus learns that if the Gemara would have said the takana, the way to fix it by din deraisa, you might have thought that really it's okay. So the Gemara they wanted the Gemara, since it's a din deraisa, we don't want you to make any mistakes. And therefore, it just gave you a very clear halacha. Viba is saying alternatively, but deraisa namin takanta. By the Raisa, really, we wouldn't be concerned. Then you really could say how to fix it. But in our Mishnah, there's so many. There are four halachas in our Mishnah, and each case in the Mishnah needs a different remedy. So the Mishnah would be a very long Mishnah. We don't like to have long Mishnahs, so we like brevity over, overdoing it the other way. Overriding the takana. Vibai Seima, Midrash Namet Takana, Miu Sukka, then Fishim also it's got lots of cases, Pasuk with any Psula. It says one halacha for all of them. Mavit, Mavit is just one case in that Mishnah, Tani Takanta, so it just tells you how to fix it. Okay, first point of the Gemara. Second point, and this is Iker Sugya as we begin. Minan immediately. In fact, the Gemara, you tell me that a sukkah that's over 20 amas is a din there right, so that it's possible. How do you know that? Minan immediately, it doesn't say it in the Torah that you got to have 20 amas. So Minan immediately, from where do we know that a sukkah over 20 amas is Pesula? We have three options here. We have Rabba, Reb Zera, and Rava. Zok the Gemara, Amar Rabba, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "Laman yedu dereisechem ki besukkah yishavtes bnei Yisrael." In order that generations should know that you're sitting in a sukkah that I took you out of Egypt in sukkahs. Right? The Gemara is going to tell us later what that means. That not yet covered or sukkahs mamish. But there's a din yediyah. You have to know that you're sitting in a sukkah. So again, remember what the Iker Sukkah is? The schach. So that means you have to be cognizant of the fact that you're sitting under schach. So when you're within 20 amas, you know you're sitting in a sukkah. The Gemara understands that if you come into a room that's very tall, you don't necessarily automatically see the roof. You don't see the ceiling. Gemara says up to 20 amas, I guess it's in your peripheral vision, you'll be able to notice it. Over 20 amas, you wouldn't see it. And therefore, it requires you to have less than 20 amas. Because there's a yediyah. You need to know that you're sitting in the sukkah when you're sitting there. Okay.
Again, it goes along with the concept we said by the mobile. You have to be able to see it.
Correct.
So if the sukkah is more than 20 amas high, you won't notice it, and therefore it's no line.
Correct. Next. If Zera gives an alternative. He says, Mehacha. He gives a pasuk in, he brings a pasuk in Yeshayahu. Sukka2aVideo etzel yoimam mechayv. A sukkah will protect you. You'll have a sukkah. This is referring to Achras Yom. Kadosh Baruch will give us a nice sukkah that will protect us from the heat of the day. So you see, a sukkah needs to provide shade. So up to 20 amas, you'll actually be sitting in the shade of the schach. Once you get over 20 amas, then you're not sitting in the shade or the shadow of the schach. You're actually just sitting in the shadow of the walls. Okay, Rashi says the Gemara is going to be making this in a scenario where you have a very small sukkah. You only have 4x4 sukkah, 4 amas by 4 amas. In that scenario, you'll only be sitting bitzel defanas, not in bitzel sukkah. Abaye bothered by this. He says, I don't get you. So if you make your sukkah in a valley or between two buildings, two skyscrapers, so it's also going to be possible because you're not getting shit. Your schach is not providing shade. Amar Lev Zera says back to Abaye, Hasam dal ashers kanayim. If you were to take away the mountains, you take away the skyscrapers, you could sell sukkah. So then your sukkah would be providing you shade. But in the scenario when it's over 20 amas, if you take away the walls, you're not going to have any shade in the area you're sitting. And therefore, it is going. So it's not that you need to be sitting in. You need that your schach could provide shade, not that it necessarily is providing the shade. You need to be sitting in schach that could provide shade. So the Gemara is, again, if you're sitting in a sukkah that's 4 amas by 4 amas and it's 20 amas tall, you're not going to get shade from the schach. If the sun, unless it's gone mamish over, right? The sun goes on a little bit of an angle, which I don't think it is ever, right? Yeah, but it goes like that. The sun doesn't go like that. Then I guess where you are. It's right. It goes through the southern sky.
What are you guys, astronomers?
It goes. The sun doesn't go like that. It doesn't go straight. It goes in the southern.
In Eretz Yisrael, though.
All right.
Right? So, I don't know.
The closer to the equator, the more.
Kim the Rabban, I think that's the lashon that Rashi uses. All right, Rabbi says from here, you need a sukkah that's for 7 days. It needs to be a dwelling of 7 days. Amr Teira. Kol Shivas Yom Tzei Mediras Keva, V'Shav B'Diras Arei. The Gemara is saying you got to get out of your permanent dwelling place and get into your temporary dwelling place. Ad Esrim Amma Adam Oisi Diras Arei, until 20 amas you can build a temporary structure. Lamal Mesrim Amma, you won't be able to build temporary. Those walls are going to need to be well-founded, strong into the ground. In Adam Oisi Diras Arei, El Diras Keva. So 20 amas and over is going to be no good because that's going to be Diras Keva. Under 20 is good. One second. You sound like you're saying to me that if you would make iron walls low, you have them 10, 12, 15 tvachim high, you have 10 amas, whatever it is. That's going to be puzzled because it's a diras keva. So Rav said, you don't understand what I'm saying. This is what I mean. Not that it's a siva, but it's a siman. The Torah was giving us a siman of how high your sukkah can be. And it gave us a siman by telling us you can only build something which would a diras arai, the height would be something that you'd build arai. Until 20 amas where you would build something temporary. So then if you made it keva, that'd also be good. But from 20 amas and on, where you would make it a diras keva, then even if you would make it a diras ara, you also would not fulfill your obligation. So we have three shitas in Amoraim here why 20 amas is no good. Rav is a gloman yedu, you need to be able to see the schach. Rav Zera is because you need your schach to be providing shade, and Rava is that you need a diras, you need the shear of the diras arai, which is 20 amas. Now, the Gemara is going to go through now two things. First, the Gemara is going to explain why each shita doesn't say like the other, and then the Gemara is going to have three different ukimtas of the machlekes of Yehuda and the Rabbanan, and try to see who goes like. So here we go. Kuli Karabba. First, I want to know why doesn't Rav Zera and Rava say like Rabba? Rabba had a nice treatment on the Derisechem. Kuli Karabba le Amri because ahu yidil derisi. That's not pshat in the pasuk. The pasuk means the reason why there's a mitzvah of sukkah is that future generations should know that I took you out in sukkahs. Not that when you're sitting in the sukkah, you actually have to know that you're sitting there. So. How you deal with derisi? The shot of the pasuk is you deal with deris for future generations. Okay, why don't they select Rav Zera? Rav Zera and Amrulei Amru. That's a prophecy. The Sukka2aVideo is a prophecy that in the future we'll sit in the sukkah for shade. That doesn't mean that your sukkah has to provide shade. In the future, you'll have a sukkah that gives you shade. Rav Zera. So what does Rav Zera do with that? That's a pashup shot in the pasuk. So in came lemakra v'chuppah. My sukkah. Why did the Torah use the noun sukkah? Just call it a chuppah, a canopy that provides shade. Why are you calling it a sukkah? So the Torah says it's coming to teach you two things. It's coming to teach you that liyasad lava you will have a sukkah that you'll have a chuppah that provides sail, and secondly to define for us what a sukkah is, something that provides shade. They also didn't say like Rava mishum the kushi that Abaye because they held like Abaye's kasha. Abaye's kasha again was that it sounds like you want to give it a shear, that the Torah is trying to give you a shear, then really the Torah, then will be puzzled. They didn't like his answer. Okay, so that's why each didn't say hold to the next. Now the Gemara is going to bring, again, we have machlokes in our mission between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan whether 20 amos is possible. In what scenario, is this machlokes everywhere or is it in a specific scenario? So we have three ukimtas. Ukimtas means it's a qualification. That this machlokes is not in every scenario, it's only in these specific scenarios. So here we go. Kaman Azla Hadam Rav Yoshia Amarav. And that you'll notice that each of these members, qualifications, are said in the name of Rav from different Talmidim. Rashi points out there's machlokes amongst the Talmidim what Rav actually held. Then Rav Yoshia Amarav. The machlokes between Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanan in the Mishnah of whether you can have a sukkah over 20 amas is b'she'ein defanes magias l'schach. That's only if the walls don't reach the schach. Aval defanes magias l'schach afilu ma'al ma'asra ama kashera. And even if your wall hits the ceiling, hits the roof, hits the schach, then you can even be over 20 amas. So according to which of those shitas that we just said, would that make sense? So Gemara says that works out like Rabbah, because Rabbah said, that's Kaman Karabba. Remember, Rabbah said the issue here is that you don't see the schach. So comes along Rav and the Rishya says that machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan is only if your wall doesn't get to the schach. But if your wall gets to the schach, then your eye will follow up the wall and you'll be able to see the schach. So therefore, even if it's more than 20 amas, the Chacham would agree that's kosher according to Rabbah.
How do you have schach that is being supported by the wall?
Well, you could just have a frame without the wall going up to it. Okay. Next, that was Rabbi Yoshi's Ukimta. Kamana as that Gemara tries another Ukimta, or says another Ukimta. Kamana as lahad amar Rav Huna amar Rav. Machlokes b'she'ein ba'al arba amas. Al v'yesh b'yosim al arba amas afilu me'asur amma kishira. So they said the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim of how that whether a sukkah could be over 20 amas is only by a sukkah that's 4 amas by 4 amas. But if the sukkah is any larger than that, then everybody would agree you can have a sukkah over 20 amas. Who does that go like? So Gemara says, come on, that's Kereb Zera. The Reb Zera said, the Am Mishum Selhu, the Kivin the Revicha Iket Sel Sukkah. Once it's wider than 4x4, then you'll have Sel Sukkah. So Taisus has 2 ways to learn this. Either it means that you always have to go with those proportions, meaning the proportions of 4x4 and 20 amas is no good. Okay, so you always have to go with those proportions. If you're meaning the proportions of 4x4 by 19 is kosher, and if you expand that and you keep those proportions, then you'll be kosher. That's for this is first shot. You have to keep the proportions in order to be getting under 20 is good.
20.
Right, so let's say 20 is good. So 4x4 by 20 is good. So you keep those proportions. That's his first shot. Second shot says is that now once you get bigger than 4, Taisus says in the third Taisus, I think the third one. Yeah, in the third Taisus in the middle, it says inami kim luhud l'rabbanan dafilu b'gayva elef. He actually can't sell schach. Portim ha'isar rachava yoysim midal amas. And he says, "Kimu the Rabbanan had such knowledge that once you get more than 4x4, you'll always be getting shade from your schach, no matter how high it is." Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, another memra. Kaman azal hadam Rav Chan bar Rabba amar Rav. Rav Chan bar Rabba, he says the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim of having a sukkah of 20 amas, over 20 amas, is only in a scenario where machlokes in machlokes al Reish Gurur Shulchanai. That's only of a very, very small sukkah that is only 7 by 7 that can hold your head, most of your body, and your table. Mar says, who does that go like? Come on, like a chad. That doesn't go like anybody. Okay, so we have 3 ukimtas in the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Are we talking about where it didn't reach the roof? But if it reaches the roof, it's kosher. It's like Rabbah. Are we talking about by a 4x4? But if it's more by 4x4, everybody would agree that's kosher. Or are we going like Rav Chanan bar Rabbah, who says machlokes is only if it's very small, but if it gets bigger, it would be kosher. So Umar takes a moment here to understand what's the machlokes between these last 2 shittas here between Rav Huna and Rav Chanan bar Rabbah. Says the Gemara, Bishlam of Rabbi Yoshia. I understand why Rabbi Yoshia pliga the Rav Huna of Rav Chanan bar Rabbah. I understand why the first shita of whether it's got to go to the first, if it goes to the roof, you're okay. That shita, the inu kayav yishur b'mashcha, the iu like kayav shur b'mashcha. I understand why he argues because he holds it's not dependent on the other dimensions of the sukkah. No one gave dimensions. His would apply in all scenarios of width. Okay, but the other 2, what are they arguing about? Maybe they're arguing about what is the minimum shear of the sukkah. The Ma'arsav are extra Sukka2aVideo Amas. Maybe Rav Huna holds that the minimum, the reason why he picked 4x4 is because he holds the minimum size of the sukkah is 4 amas by 4 amas. Umar and Rav Chanan bar Abba says that the minimum size of the sukkah is going to be something that can hold Rashi of Rabbi Shulchan. Umar says, "What? I don't have to do that. Everybody could really hold that the extra sukkah is Rashi of Rabbi Shulchan. And the machlokes is a little bit different. The Mar Savar that Machzak is Rashi Rabbi Shulchan Pli. The machlokes, this is Rav Chanan bar Abba holds that the machlokes is going to be by only when it's a 7x7 sukkah. But if it's Yaisim Yeroshi Rishulchani, then they're called Ksher. And Rav Huna argues on that. And he says, Meroshi Rishulchani al Amas Pligi. The machlokes goes from the minimum share of a sukkah all the way to 4x4. Al Yaisim Amas, they're called Ksher, but more than that, everybody would be Kasher. Okay, great. So he dealt with these three shitas and why they don't hold of each other. Now the Gemara is going to ask a kasha, which is ultimately going to be a kasha just on the last two shitas, not a Rabbi Yosef, but it brings a very interesting brisa to ask the kasha. Meisvei. The Gemara challenges them from a brisa. Sukkah. You have a sukkah that's over 20 ounces. Pisula. So far, so good. Rabbi Yehuda machsher at arba'im b'chamisha. Rabbi Yehuda is machsher even 40 or 50. Taisa says it just means he's making all the way. I'm Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, but Rabbi Yehuda counters the Chacham. He says, "I got a story for you, Rabbi Yehuda." I'm sorry, Chacham. Ma'isa b'Hilani Amalka. There was a story with Hilani Amalka, Belud. Shaisi Sukka2aVideo Me'esher Mama. Her sukkah was more than 20 amas high. The Zakanim would come in and out. Nobody said a word to her. No one said, Hilani, your sukkah is too tall, you got to lower your sukkah. So you see that they must be, why did the Chacham say anything to him? Because they have like me, that you can have a sukkah over 20 amas. Amrullah, the Chacham said to Rabbi Yehuda, Misham Raya, you bring me a Raya from there? Isha Isa. Hilani is a woman who determined a sukkah. She's exempt. It's a session's man grama. Amr Lahan, Rabbi said, "Bet not so fast." She had 7 sons. And more than that, she only did everything she did apil chacham. So first thing, before it asks this kasha, I want to understand what in the world was Rabbi Yehuda countering with here. 2 points. She had 7 sons, and she only worked with the Rabbanan. What did that mean? It says, what do you need that for? You have a good time that she had 7 sons. So Mar says, maybe you'll tell me. Maybe you'll tell me that you're right, she had 7 sons, but they were small. They were all ketanim. Ketanim p'tur min sukkah, and a ketanim are part from sukkah. So it says, "Kivan the shiva havu." If she had 7 sons, there had to be one that didn't need his mom anymore. The halach is that midrabanan. When do you have to mechanech your kid to sleep in the sukkah? At what age? The age is when they don't wake up in the middle of the night and call for mommy. If they don't wake up in the middle of the night and call for mommy, then they can sleep in the sukkah. Because if they wake up in the middle of the night and call for Abba, well, you'll be in the sukkah with them, so you don't have a problem. If they're still calling for mommy, so then you don't have, then they're put them in the sukkah. You don't have to be mechanech them. So if you had 7 kids, there had to be one that was able to sleep in the sukkah, that was old enough to in the midst of chinuch. Okay. Oh, maybe you'll say, yeah, but that's only midrabanan to mechayiv. And maybe this Hilani Amalka didn't keep the rabbanans. So Gemara says, Tashma, that's what he meant, Rabbi Yehuda, when he said that everything she did meaning she kept the rabbanans too. Now, before we get to the kasha, just it's interesting to point out here, there's a machlokes whether women are chayiv and chinuch midir, whether women have a din chinuch midir, whether they have a din chinuch. Whether al mi mutal achiv shel chinuch. Is it only on the fathers, also on the mother? It's machlokes rishonim. From here, it seems very clear that women have a chiv of chinuch because this was Hilani. Number 2, there's a chakira who the mitzvah of chinuch is on. Is a kid chayiv, meaning when there's a dirabban, when a child is roi for chinuch. So does he now have a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, or is it just a mitzvah on the parent to mechanech him? And that mitzvah is midrabanan. The lashon here is mashma mechayiv, right? Midrabanan hu de mechayiv. Maybe it sounds like that. On the other hand, it says v'i midrabanan lamashkacha. That sounds like the mitzvah would be on her, but she's not chayiv in the mitzvah. Or she wouldn't listen to the mitzvah d'Rabbanan. It sounds like the mitzvah d'Rabbanan would be on her, right? In mitzvah of chinuch here. Okay, but let's get back to our kasha. Okay, Lamais, what do we have here? We have Machlekes Nacham and Rabbi Yehuda. Nacham and Rabbi Yehuda are arguing on whether Hillary had a sukkah that was over 20 amas. Okay, I mean she had a sukkah that was over 20 amas, and whether you can sit in there or not. Now, says in Bishlama. Remember what we said. We had 3 ukintas in this Machlekes. According to let's go backwards. According to Rav Chanan bar Abba, the only time there's Machlekes of Yehuda and the Chacham is in a sukkah that's 7 by 7. Tvachim. That's tiny. Right? That's like a foot and a half. You know, is that Hillary was sitting in a sukkah that was a foot and a half by 20 amas tall? And according to Rav Huna, the machlekes is only when it was 4 amas by 4 amas. It's also pretty small. And according to Gemara, says, well, let's go down. According to Rabbi Yosha, things are great. Bishlam Rabbi Yosha, who said the machlekes, the machlekes is only when the walls don't hit the roof. Well, that makes a lot of sense because because a queen she needs ventilation, she needs some air, right? So if you were wealthy enough, you were able to build just a frame and not have your walls go all the way up to the top. So a malka sat in a sukkah that had ventilation, that the walls didn't hit the schach. So there you'd have machlekes if you don't have if it's over 20 amas, it's going to be kosher or not. That's beautiful. Mishum avira, because she wanted some good air. Elamanda Amr, we'll just read another couple lines here in Daf Gimel. Elamanda Amr b'Sukka2aVideo machlekes. But if the machlekes is by that mean machlekes of Yehuda and the Chacham is only by a tiny sukkah. V'chidarka shalmaka leisha b'Sukka2aVideo. Does a queen sit in a tiny sukkah? So Amr Rabba bar Rav Ad l'inschal sukkah kitinas. It's a sukkah that's made with little rooms, cubicles. V'chidarka shalmaka leisha b'Sukka2aVideo kitinas. Does a malka sit in a cubicle? A sukkah that's cubicles. He says there was one cubicle, and that was for the queen. The queen, Hillary, would sit in a cubicle. Why? Mer says, the kids would sit in the regular sukkah, and she sat in a little area. She should have privacy. That's why that's what the Chum said. That's why they're not enough to say anything because their kids weren't sitting in the sukkah. The kids were sitting in that little 4x4 sukkah, but still they didn't say anything. And according to Rav Huna, where it was 7 by 7, Rashi's like he didn't have a chance to have shot in his brisa. There's no chance for him. Tesa says, "What do you mean? Maybe it was a very long and narrow sukkah, so there was room for everybody." Okay, Chavra, we did our first blot. Baruch Hashem. We should continue. We should all be zeicha, just like we learned tonight. We should zeicha to learn every night till we make a siyum and for more further. Okay, Alishkech for joining. Jordan, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Wonderful night.